it's less likely, I suppose, in a place like where we live. Um, but it's also the case that those people would not be offended if we asked the question. So I think it's important, and I think from here on out, I will be more careful to always ask that question.
And one thing that we remind everybody is that a lot of shootings involving children happen around the holidays. They happen around Thanksgiving and Christmas because you're going to family members in
Mhm.
other states that you may not see often, and they're your family. So of course you're like, "Oh, they're fine." But then you're sitting there having dinner and the kids are off playing in another room and you don't think about it. And shootings happen then because the kids are in unfamiliar houses and they think it's okay to go check out grandpa's office, and that people don't really realize that. So we even have tip sheets of like how to talk with your family about this beforehand to make sure, hey, if we're coming over to your house, please make sure that all the guns are put away because, little Timmy, he's in everything right now. So we just want to make sure, trying to make it like a normal conversation, but it's important.
So, last question. What are some concrete steps that our listeners can take right now to help Moms Demand fight for sensible gun control legislation to help prevent gun violence?
Well, the one that I talked about on the federal level already, we are fighting tooth and nail against concealed carry reciprocity. So we're calling, we're writing letters, we're on social media, and just making sure that you're convincing people that you may know that are in, heavily Republican states to also just make noise because we've been told that in the past 5 years that Moms Demand Action has been around, that we've just exploded with numbers. We're, almost up to 6 million members across the whole country. And as we go to the legislative houses and we're all wearing red shirts and we're marching down the hallway, they know who we are and they know that we're coming. And they've said, you're kind of one of the most powerful lobbying groups right now. So it's not just that the NRA is there with their side, it's that we're there. So even if it's just one action of texting or calling, it's the numbers that really, really help, and this kind of collective voice that there really are way more many people out there that care about gun violence prevention than who don't. And I also have one other action. I just wanted to make sure to tell you more about Illinois with the Gun Dealer Licensing Act. So those bad apple dealers, those top 10 that are right around Chicago, we know that they're selling guns to people that they shouldn't be. And the problem is that they only have a federal gun dealer license. So the federal license means that someone from the ATF will come and inspect their shop to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But since resources are spread so thin, that may be once every 5 years, once
Mm.
every 8 years that they even get an inspection. And so that type of structure allows for a lot of things to happen in between those times. And so what this Illinois Gun Dealer Licensing Act is pushing for is for us to allow at the state level for regular check-ins with law enforcement and local state regulators and other things, which is not unheard of because Illinois licenses every other type of business. A manicure, dog grooming, tattoo artist, they all have state licenses that they pay for. It's gun dealers do not. So it's something that the Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Coalition has been working on for almost, 10, 12 years to
Mm.
get this passed to allow for best best business practices to be applied to gun dealerships, which I think, most people agree with, over 85% of the state agrees with. So that type of thing, if this is the first time you're hearing about this and you didn't realize that, hey, gun dealers aren't even really licensed here in our state, please let your state senator and your state representative know that you support this. We are hoping for a vote on this in January or February, and you can bet that there's going to be a huge contingent of moms down there in Springfield sitting there and watching them vote on this gun dealer licensing bill.
I want to come with you.
I would love for you to come.
I bet we'll have a couple of listeners from Illinois. I know we have a lot of listeners in the state right now, so make sure you follow up with your state representatives.
Yeah, we have listeners all over the country, but Chicago is always the most heavily represented among our listenership. So if you're listening, Illinoisians, what are we called?
Illinois?
Whatever we are. Be loud. Yeah, that's great. Can you also tell us what's coming up next week with the 5-year anniversary of Sandy Hook?
Absolutely. So December 14th is the 5-year mark of the Sandy Hook shooting. So there are vigils across the whole country. If you go to momsdemandaction.org, you can look under Take Action and you can just put in your zip code and you can see if there's an event close to you. Here in Chicago, we will be having one the day before on Wednesday, December 13th at the Fourth Presbyterian Church. It'll be around 6:30 that night. We really just want to have people show up and honor that particular event and the lives lost then, but the lives we lose every single day to gun violence.
So we'll put links up for that as well. Kind of hard to believe that it's been 5 years since that happened. And I know that in some ways it feels like things are still terrible and there's still mass shootings, but it's good to hear about the good things that you've been able to accomplish and that you have grown to be 6 million strong. A testament both to the organization, but also to what was clearly untapped frustration among people all over the country who are glad to finally have a way to work on this issue.
And Madison listeners, I just looked. There is, in fact, a vigil here in Madison. So if anybody is interested, reach out to us on our Facebook page or email us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com. And we can meet up and go.
I just wanted to say thank you for having me on. And basically, this is something that has been dormant for too long, that we just kind of assumed that, oh, okay, well, most of us are against gun violence, right? And if you can't just let it be one of those issues on the back burner. For me, as the lead in Chicago here, I know that there's so many issues that I care about that I want to be fighting for, but I need to be fighting for gun violence prevention because people that are wanting to harm immigrants, Muslims, LGBT, women, I mean, all of these groups that are under attack right now, if they have more guns, that's just going to make it worse. So for me, if I can help attack that one piece of the puzzle, I know it won't solve everything, but if I can help that one piece, then I'm hoping it'll help the country.
I think too that using the types of strategies that Moms Demand is using to focus on legislation, to show up at state houses, to call representatives, that once you learn those techniques, you can use those for all of the issues that you care about. And so, I think it's really good practice to be involved with Moms Demand. All right. Thank you, Brenna. And we are very thrilled with the work that Moms Demand Action is doing. And we thank you for everything that you're doing in Chicago.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, listeners. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I'm here with my co-host, Sophie. Hi, Sophie.
Hey.
And for this segment, we have with us today Shannon Cosgrove, who is the Director of Health Policy for an NGO called Cure Violence. Hi, Shannon.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. So in the previous segment of this episode, we were talking with Brenna from Moms Demand Action. We were talking about what Moms Demand Action has been doing about gun violence in the United States. And so we're very interested in hearing about the model that Cure Violence uses to look at and to help counteract violence both in the US and also worldwide. So could you start by telling us just a little bit about what Cure Violence is?
Sure, I'm happy to. So in 1999, Dr. Gary Sluckin, who's our founder and CEO, started the organization, which we're based in Chicago out of the University of Illinois at Chicago, the School of Public Health. So then he came back from Africa where he was working with the World Health Organization as an epidemiologist. He was working there with thousands of individuals that were experiencing TB and HIV, cholera, etc. There was just illnesses that were spreading very quickly. And so he and his team started working on a community health worker model where they looked at individuals who were in the community, from the community, who were trusted, who were credible, and they trained them to become the interveners, if you will. So this worked really well in Africa, as it has worked all across the world. And so when Dr. Sucking came back to the U.S. to figure out what his next launch or next public health initiative was going to be, he started looking at maps of violence in Chicago and said, this is a health issue. Why aren't we working on this? So it was clustering just like it was in other areas of the country. So violence is clustering in certain areas of the community, and it was spreading very similar to, say, the flu every single year or between years even. And it was also transmitting from person to person. So he started the organization in 99. He did a pilot project and saw incredible success, and then started to spread in a good way the work across the whole world. And so now we're in 100 communities, seeing drastic reductions in violence, and sometimes as little as 3 weeks. And we're seeing this work sustained across the board. So we recently just celebrated 1,000 days in Queensbridge, New York, that they haven't had a homicide or shooting in 1,000 days. So seeing incredible success deploying this 3-part model. And that 3 parts, they include interrupting the transmission. That's through the work of our credible messengers. And then we change behaviors of those that are at highest risk for violence. And then we change social norms. And that's a huge piece for public health, as I'm sure everyone here knows. But if you think about smoking, a large part of why smoking has decreased is because it's no longer acceptable. It's no longer cool. It's no longer what we do. So those are the 3 parts we use with our model, and it's seen incredible success across the world.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it means to be an interrupter?
Our interrupters are the only people who are cut out for this job. We say their resume would beat anyone else's resume hands down. These are not individuals who have master's degree in social work or individuals who have done community-based outreach work in the past. These are individuals who have experienced violence and have a story of their own that lets them be credible in the communities that they're working in. They're also from the communities that they're serving. So we have a very specific hiring process that looks very different than your typical process. And we hire the credible people within the neighborhood. So they will be essentially acting as firefighters in our communities. And so every community we go into, we do an assessment and we understand the dynamics of the violence and where it's clustering, where it's spreading, and why. And then we look for the right people to essentially stand in the middle, oftentimes with 2 people who potentially are armed, and they stop the violence from escalating. And so these interrupters are trained heavily. We start off with a 40-hour training, and then it continues beyond that. And they work on conflict management, de-escalation tactics, motivational interviewing, you name it, whatever is going to be able to allow a person to pivot away from not only that situation, but ideally be able to move on from violence itself and start exhibiting healthier behaviors. So our interrupters are really the key aspect of our model, and they're the reason that it works. They're coupled with outreach workers. The outreach workers have a list of individuals that are at high risk, and they work to just work to change the skill set and into something that can be used in terms of a job or identifying housing or whatever the needs are of that individual at that time, according to that individual. So we don't try to guess what someone needs or even suggest that a person should do X, Y, or Z. Instead, we work to build rapport and trust and get that person to the place that they want to be so that they can be successful. All of this has been outlined and documented in our documentary, which I would encourage everyone to look at. It's called The Interrupters. and it's been award winning and really highlights the great work